Good afternoon and welcome to the Preservation Association of Lincoln Brown Bag Lecture Series. My name is Eileen Burke and I'm the co-chair of the Education Committee for the Preservation Association of Lincoln. Today our lecture is jointly sponsored with the Preservation Association of Lincoln as well as the American Institute of Architects, the Lincoln chapter. Our speaker today is Roxanne Smith. Roxanne has worked at the Nebraska State Capitol for over 15 years. She has come to love and appreciate the Capitol for the fine architectural monument that it is. Roxanne's talk today is titled, The Nebraska Capitol Collection, a Valuable Tool for Preservation of Our Landmark Capitol. Please join me in welcoming Roxanne Smith.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here today to share information about the Nebraska Capitol collections and our archive program. The Nebraska Capitol Commission was created to oversee the construction of a new state capitol for Nebraska. The Capitol Commission, during that construction process, received lots of documentation, lots of information, all the architectural drawings, everything that was part of the correspondence and the work that was done for construction of the building was used during the construction, and then after that, it was put away into a vault. The Capitol Commission then became an advisory committee and served to advise the people who cared for our building. The Capitol Murals Commission was created to hold murals competitions to finish the building. In 1974, the State Building Division was created with the responsibility of taking care of all the state buildings as well as the Capitol. The final murals competition was held in 1990 with the Capitol Murals Commission being recreated. And then in 2004, the Office of the Capitol Commission was created to restore and maintain the Nebraska State Capitol. That's a brief history and timeline of the Capitol Commission. The Office of the Capitol Commission, for which I work, has administrative offices. We have the archive, carpenters, the custodial crew, the ground shop, maintenance shop, and tours. All of us are here to care for and promote the Capitol. Here we have a history of the archive. As I mentioned, following the completion of the building, all the materials related to the Capitol Commission and construction were placed in a vault. In the early 1970s, the architectural drawings were removed from the vault and began to be processed and made available for use by Capitol staff. In 1993, the Capitol archivist was hired, and then in 1995, a state-of-the-art archive space was created. Here you can see one view of the Capitol Archive. You can see the flat files, which hold all the architectural documents and drawings. You can see the larger architectural documents are rolled for storage, where they'll be easily accessible and well maintained. Some of the pieces that we have in the archive collection include the maquette for Elizabeth Dolan's mural in the Law Library. This was an instance of where Elizabeth Dolan had the maquette in her studio up until she passed away. Upon her passing, the maquette was removed and no one knew exactly what it was. It was removed and taken out and put into the trash. One of the people that had an office next door to her saw the maquette on the trash pile and said, "That's important, that's significant, I need to save it." So they picked it up and they kept it in their possession until their passing, when their daughters found the maquette. They realized what it was. They brought it to the Capitol and asked us if we wanted to have that original maquette, a very valuable piece of information that helps us learn the design process for that mural. But it's an instance where someone has something that perhaps they don't know what it is or they don't know their value, and luckily there was someone out there who was able to see it and return it to the building. The archive is kept in a constant temperature and humidity. It has antifungal paint on the wall, and only within the archive we use metal furniture because the metal does not off-gas. Here's another view of the archive that shows pipes that we have that go through the archive are encased in plexiglass, and they have gutters put in so that if there's any condensation that come from the pipes that run through the archive, it can be taken out of the archive space to help maintain that constant temperature and humidity. You can see on a work table here in the front, there are the acid-free folders in acid-free boxes containing all the correspondence and commission minutes and different items that were documenting the construction of the building. And then in the very back, you can see the shelving that holds all those boxes filled with that correspondence. The Office of the Capitol Commission and the Nebraska Capitol Collections. The Nebraska Capitol Collections encompass all the materials that we have within the Capitol, and the purpose of the Capitol Collection, the mission statement is that the collections exist to collect, preserve, research, and interpret objects, the documentation and information significantly related to the Capitol, and the Capitol is defined as the present building and its landscape designed by architect Bertram Grosvenor Goodhue and built between 1922 and 1932, and the site is bounded by 14th, 16th, H, and K Street. And there you can see specifically to the curb line, that is the area that the Office of the Capitol Commission is responsible for. The mission of the Capitol Collections is to collect, preserve, research, and interpret those materials. Within the collection, we create and maintain systematic collections of objects, documentation, and information on the Capitol's development and history. We collect from state caregivers of that material. We collect the original components of the building, and we collect objects, documents, and information from outside sources. As I mentioned with the Elizabeth Dolan maquette, that came in from an outside source. If there's people who have documents perhaps at a time they worked for the Capitol and there was some material that they had that they took home with them, we've had that kind of material returned to us. So we're very interested in collecting all we can about the Capitol. Here you can see an example of collecting from the original components of the building. During the roof project with the exterior masonry project, we needed to get access to an attic space to run additional roof drains. When they opened up that attic space that hadn't been seen in over 80 years, they found in the bottom of that attic space, they found an original drawing or a blueprint that they had of the tile detail from the arch over the speaker's niche in the west chamber. You can see it's a Guastavino tile drawing, and the Guastavino company would have provided these drawings to the tile setters, the tile workers, who would have then placed the tile and taken their drawing and said, we're done with this now, we don't need it, and just thrown it on the floor. It was to our benefit that we found it there, that they left it there for us. We found it there. Here you can see Karen Wagner and Brett Doherty. They are in the attic space. They have an acid-free paper, which they are placed under the architectural drawing to stabilize it so that they could then roll it up and carry it out through the very small hole that was created to get access to that attic. But this is a drawing that was not part of our collection, and it was very beneficial to us that those tile setters considered it trash and left it laying. Preservation of materials within the collection is very important. We have to provide appropriate storage of conservation and cataloging to museum standards. As I mentioned, with the state-of-the-art archive with antifungal paint on the walls, we have put it to the highest museum standards. And then we have proper storage in the boxes, in the flap files for all of the archival materials. Here you can see an example of preservation. When we did the West Chamber Restoration Project, they were doing the restoration of the stenciling in the ceiling, and we found the pounce sheets, which we knew were there, but we just hadn't had an opportunity to take them out of storage and use them. You can see in the top photograph how one of the pounce sheets that they used for the patterning of the stencils is being rolled out on the table. Then the pounce sheet will be flattened, humidified. In the bottom, you can see that Karen has glassine paper, and she is placing that paper over the pounce sheets so that the graphite won't rub and smear as it's placed into the files. The pounce sheet was used in the educational programs that we provided during the West Chamber restoration process. And here you can see the work that they're doing there, and the pounce sheets were the patterns that they would have used to put the outlines for the stenciling, and then the artists would have used from those. And again, like the architectural drawings for the tile work, the pounce sheets were a consumable item given to the artists as a stencil, and then it's very lucky that we still had those in our possession. The Capitol Commission that built the building was very good in that they collected and saved almost everything they could and then put it in a vault and provided it for us. Research is another component. The collections exist to support the restoration, maintenance, and promotion of the Capitol. We also allow limited research in the collections for people doing scholarly research. Here's an example of the East Lounge restoration work that we did within our collections. We have an original photograph of the East Lounge. The photograph was of such a high quality that when we did the restoration work in the Wary Room or East Lounge, we were able to blow up that photograph, see the detail for the original furniture that was in there, so that the furniture that was in there had undergone a series of reupholsteries, so we were able to go back to the original photograph, look and see the detail work, and then when we did the restoration, we were able to copy exactly those details that might have been lost in subsequent reupholstery. Then you can also see that within the collection, we have the catalogs that they use to pick the office chairs, and we have drawings and diagrams of some of the original couches. And there you can see, indeed, there's a drawing of the couch, and then right there are some of the sofas or couches that are used in some of the formal spaces of the building. Interpretation is an important part of the work we do. Promotion of the Capitol. We have tours, presentations, publications, exhibit, and outreach programs such as this PAL program. Karen also presented a program on our archive, on the Capitol's archive at the Midwest Archive Conference in the fall of 1999. One of the ways that we use for promotion, we have used original artwork from the archive for some of the murals in our building, and we have used that original artwork for placement on T-shirts that we sell in the Landmark store in the Capitol, another way to promote our building. In promotion, we also had an open house for Capitol staff. As people sit at the desks or they walk through the building, we felt it was important that they know all the behind-the-scenes work that we do. And so here's Karen leading a tour through the archive for the open house that we had. Another example, we have displays that educate visitors who come in the building about the different aspects of the building, the different renovation work that we do, and we rely on the archive to help provide information for those kind of displays. The Nebraska Capitol Collections has 3 separate components. One is the archival collection, another is the permanent collection, and then there are the circulating collections. Within the archive, the collection holds the architectural drawings, correspondence, photographs, records relating to the construction of the present Capitol, and the ongoing preservation, restoration, and maintenance of the building. The Capitol Archive also serves as an architectural archive designed to collect, maintain, and study documentary materials concerning the Capitol, its construction, preservation, maintenance, and history. Here you can see an example of the flat files that are in the archive containing the architectural drawings. There are duplicate sets of the architectural drawings. Some are in the maintenance shop. Some are up on 7th floor for the preservation architects to use, so that we don't have one set, we have many sets. We have original linens, and then we have Mylar copies that we work from also. We have design details. You notice the image of the memorial chamber chandelier that we used on the postcard. As well, in the open house that we had, you probably noticed there's a picture that was done, or a detailed design that was done to provide a list of the different stone, marble and limestone and slate that was used on the ornamental floor of the main 2nd floor hallways. That's very valuable information. Correspondence is an important component of the archive. As mentioned, you can see the shelving with the boxes. There we have some of the boxes. The commission minutes are included, correspondence between the architect in New York, the on-site architects, the commission, and the various contractors are included. The correspondence is separated by author or topic and cataloged chronologically. Again, they're stored in acid-free folders, in acid-free boxes for their long-term health. Here you can see an example of some of the correspondence that we have in collection. This is the actual contract that was signed by Bertram Goodhue on November 16th, 1920, to establish that he was going to be the architect that was to build the building. And I might point out, at the bottom of the page, you can see the signatures, and I blew this up so we could see Thomas Kimball's signature. He was the consulting architect or the advising architect who oversaw the construction of the building, the design competition. Here is Bertram Goodhue's signature. There is Governor Samuel McKelvey's signature, chairman of the Capital Commission. And then there is Johnson's signature, the acting secretary for the Capital Commission. So this is a very, very nice document in that we can see the original signatures of the key players, as well as documenting the details of the contract that Bertram Goodhue signed for construction, or for designing the building. We have photographs within the collection also. You can see a photograph taken from the south side of the building, looking up at the tower being constructed. On the right-hand side, you can see a postcard that we copied. We had a chance to go to the Sunderland Marble Company in Omaha for some research, and they brought out their archive. They had numerous documents about the building, and they had postcard that they had received from the marble company that shows them the guys in Italy sitting on a marble column that was going to be destined to come to the Capitol. We try to get as many photographs and as much supplemental documentation as we can for the Capitol Archive. You never know when something will come in handy. If there's a photograph of your family or your grandparents that were visiting the Capitol, and they put everybody on the north steps and took a big picture, and you have that photograph, it's always nice for us, if you're inspired to donate those kind of items to us. We don't look at the family in the picture, we look at the background. Images of the Capitol. What trees were in place? Were the windows open? Were there air conditioners in the windows at that time? Trying to find out the evolution of the development of the Capitol. As well, we take donations. As I mentioned, family photos, items you might find at an auction, postcards and things, documentation. You never know where it comes, but if you find something that you think might be useful for the Capitol, you can always contact us and we can take a look. Likewise, with the Sunderland postcard, they didn't want to donate that to us, but we were able to bring it to the Capitol and copy it so that we have that additional documentation within the archive. Here you can see on 7th floor, we have bookshelves and bookshelves that are filled with materials that are part of the archive. They're there's not enough room in the archive to store all this documentation, but we keep it, and as part of the materials are post-commission records. Renovations, restorations, work that was done in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Some of this work was done when we did the restoration and renovation projects in the 1989 renovation, work that we've done for renovation of offices. We keep a specific file on all of those activities. That way, in future, if preservation architects want to come back and say we need to modify or change this room, then they'll be able to go back to the documents and find out what kind of work that was done previously. On the right-hand side, those are the folders, the notebooks that were used for the masonry project. Because that project is over and complete, those documents will become part of the archive versus working documents versus a project that was over. That'll become part of the archive. And then in 80 to 100 years, when it's necessary to come back and look at the roof again, perhaps, think about if we need to do restoration, they'll be able to go to those kind of documents, part of the archive, and find out what kind of improvements we made, how we modified the structure for the roof, if we did any modifications for the structure, if we put in any new drains, and then they won't have to go back to the original documents and guess. They'll have all the supplemental documents and the drawings that will add to their knowledge. So it's very important that we keep very good and accurate records of all the work that we're doing today on the Capitol. The collections, there are two collections within the Nebraska Capitol collections. There's the circulating and the permanent collections. They hold the furniture, light fixtures, hardware, and other elements of the building currently in use or retired from active use. The permanent collections exist to preserve objects permanently retired from use. These objects are used for research and reference purposes. They document original finishes, construction techniques, and other aspects important to the accurate restoration and preservation of pieces of the circulating collections and of the Capitol itself. And that's important that we have an example. It's important that we keep chairs. This chair was saved because it was in its original condition with its original fabric still intact. We can use this, and when these chairs were purchased for a building, they were purchased by the truckload. There are hundreds in use. There are hundreds in use throughout the Capitol. So it's nice that we have one in the permanent collection, and then we try and return the other ones to the circulating collection. This shows the details for upholstery, the tack patterns, and you can see a detail of the bottom bumper in a corner to keep it from crashing into desks. You can see that there's a little bumper detail right there that we wouldn't know about if we didn't have one intact, because perhaps in the past when they did reupholstery, they didn't go take the time and trouble to restore all that original detail. So it's wonderful that we have this in our collection to be able to do that. And there's a chair just like it, part of the circulating collection, in office, in use, with its bumper detail, reupholstered with its bumper detail, and all of its tack pattern intact. So you can see how that piece in the permanent collection serves us to do restoration and return items into the circulating collection. Additional pieces in the permanent collection: textiles from the building, including carpet samples, drapery samples. All these, when the drapes or the carpet wear out, the original drapes and carpet, we remove them, put them in boxes. You can see the archival boxes on a bookshelf. We keep those things, and then when we go to restore or replicate different components, we have the originals. We're able to match color. And there you can see a maquette done by Hildreth Mier for the Indian tapestry, the Native American tapestry in the Warner Chamber. And you can see how it's in its archival box. It has acid-free tissue paper, again, storing to museum standards. The tissue paper is placed in between the folds of the textiles so that it won't get any hard creases and that it will be maintained for long-term storage and use. The circulating collection contains the furnishings and fixtures original to the Capitol, which are still in daily use by Capitol staff. This includes office furniture, the chandeliers, the benches, everything that you see in the building that we're currently using is part of our circulating collection. Anyone who works in the Capitol can have original pieces. They request from us if we have an original bookcase and they'd like to have it in their office, we can provide it to them. Some of us are very fortunate. We have many Capitol original pieces in our office. You can see Capitol original desk, 2 Capitol original chairs, and Capitol original trash can. And if the truth were known, I have a Capitol original stapler on my desk too. The Office of the Capitol Commission, Nebraska Capitol Collections in action. As mentioned previously, the purpose of the Nebraska Capitol Collections is in service on the ongoing maintenance, preservation, and interpretation of the Capitol building. For maintenance, the sinks from the wardrobes in the Capitol are cataloged, stored, and then they can be reused in different locations. Once we remove an item from service, we catalog where it came from, we document its location, when it was removed, why it was removed, and then we get all that information documented. Then we're able to take that fixture and put it back into service at a later date and track the location of where it goes. The maintenance staff also looks at the archive, at the blueprints, for rewiring of all the light fixtures. During the masonry project, we took all the exterior light fixtures off the Capitol. All those fixtures were cleaned, they were documented to the location, they were tagged, entered to the inventory, and then at the end of the masonry project, they were replaced back on the outside of the building. So we have all that information available. The drawings, the maintenance staff uses drawings for routing of wiring within the conduit. When we need to run data and phone wires, we're able to go to the architectural drawings and look at the conduits, find out where the floor trenches are, and then be able to run that wire through those original areas. If necessary, and we need to locate new pathways through the walls for plumbing, electrical, or data conduit, we're able to go to the architectural drawings and then determine if the route that looks good when we're out in the field, if you will, in the Capitol, if that route, we go back and double check there's not a steel beam behind it, or there's not a big post, or something that will be in the way once we start core drilling. So we know where we're going as we go through. Here's an example of how the maintenance staff used the architectural drawings. There was a leak in one of the restrooms in the Capitol. The maintenance staff has a set of linens and blueprints that has been stored there in the maintenance shop since the building was completed. Maintenance staff goes in, looks at the drawings. If necessary, they check in the files underneath the original blueprints. They can check in those files. They can look for any upgrades or any recent renovations in that area. They go back to the blueprints. They can take a look and find out how the pipes are routed, where the water would come into the restroom. They were able to go in, decide which marble panel is the one they need to remove to get to the drains and things rather than taking out all the panels of the wall. They do their repair work and restoration work. Then they put it back together, and no one knows that the work was done. But there's a lot of research that goes into that kind of project before we ever try and take down a marble panel. Preservation architects use the Capitol Archive for many reasons. Matt Hansen, who is a preservation architect on staff, was able to use the paint schedule from the first construction of the building in one of his projects. And Matt, would you care to comment, please?
Like Roxanne mentioned, we use the capital collections on a frequent basis with projects in the building. One example just recently was some restoration work that we were doing in the law library. And as we were looking at coming up with the paint scheme to match what was originally present in the building, of course, it had been painted over multiple times since it was originally painted, and we wanted to find out what the original colors were. Well, we can do that in a couple of ways. One is by doing paint analysis and working with a consultant to remove layers of paint down to the original. But when I was down in the archive doing some work, I wasn't necessarily looking for this item, but I came across a paint schedule that the supervising architect of construction had put together, and it outlined all throughout the building, different components of the building, walls, ceilings, picture molding, radiators, and then spelled out descriptions of the paint colors that were to be used on those areas. And so we knew that the picture molding was a different color than the walls were. So with that information, we were able to go to and do a paint analysis on that picture molding and find out that, yes, indeed, the original color was different from the walls. And then we can take that sample and have the color paint matched with our new paint, so that the restoration is accurate to what was originally intended for the spaces. So that's one of the tools that's really been helpful as we do restoration work in the building.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks very much, Matt. Additionally, with the photograph that I showed of the East Chamber restoration, that project began with a donation by the Wary family to do the restoration work, and then Tom Casper began to do work on that project.
Pull up that picture of the lounge.
Possibly.
Be helpful.
Okay, disregard this chaos. Oh, it's way back. Oh, there it is.
That's great. Thank you.
Uh-oh. Do you think? Okay, we'll view this again. Whoops. View. Oh, it goes to the beginning.
You had it on the screen.
I know.
Yeah.
When you start slideshow, it starts at the, there it is.
There we go.
Okay,
Thank
Tom.
you. All right. As Roxanne mentioned earlier, photography was very valuable in the reupholstery of some of this original furniture in the East Senate Lounge. One of the first aspects of this work in the lounge was to look into the reupholstery of these benches that line the room. These benches are actually built into the wainscot of the lounge, so it's a perimeter condition. We quickly realized that the red naga hide that was on these benches was probably not original, and went to the archive looking for drawings specific to the lounge, came up with a very simple detail of the benches with a very simple note that just said pig skin. And having not done any investigation in the lounge earlier, we found that the cushions, and especially the back sections of the bench, were not mechanically fastened, and that they were actually just kind of pushed into place. There was a kind of a tension condition. And lo and behold, once we removed the cushions and started to pull these panels out, right at the base of these back cushions, we found that the upholsterers chose to use the old strap device to pull the cushions out, and that strap happened to be the original pigskin that they just reused. So we had a very nice sample to use for replication purposes in color and texture and the like. So Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks very much. Okay, I'm going to blast through again, I guess. Y'all stop if you want to see something again. Oh, I went too far. This one? Oh, up here. Where's my, oh, this one? Tours. No, that gives me the, I'm sorry. There it goes. Excellent. One more. Samples from collections for fabricating and replacing missing building components. When we did the restoration work in the Warner Chamber in the mid-90s, we knew that one of the original chandeliers from the Warner Chamber had become misplaced. I think at some time perhaps that chamber had been used as offices. It was lost.
This corner was turned to storage.
Oh, I'm sorry, this corner was turned into storage. And then they must have taken down that chandelier, and then at some point the chandelier went missing. So we were able to remove a chandelier, put it into a box, a very sturdy, stable box. We were able to go to the archive, and within the archival collection there are all the drawings and design works for all the chandeliers that are included throughout throughout the Capitol. The E.F. Caldwell and Company had manufactured this chandelier, and they had given us the blueprint design for it. So we were able to take the blueprint design and a carefully packed, shipped chandelier, and we sent it to a foundry that was able to use the existing chandelier and the architectural drawing and remake the chandelier for us, which we then were able to rehang in the chamber. So there's an example where something that is missing from the building, we are able to take something that we have already and then place it, refabricate it or replicate it, and then put it back into service. If we don't have something in the building, for instance, there are a pair of candlesticks that we are only aware of from photograph postcards of the governor's suite. There's a beautiful set of bronze candlesticks, very tall, that we have no additional documentation that we're aware of other than that one postcard. That's something that we greatly appreciate, being able to find those and having those come back to us. During many years of the Capitol's existence, items were removed from the Capitol, they were surplused, sold at state auction. People then who received them at the state auction have a yard sale, they sell them to someone else, no one's sure what it is. But items like that, anytime that a good citizen of Nebraska wants to return some of those Capitol original items to the building, we overwhelmingly accept those and are very, very grateful to receive any kind of materials returned to the Capitol. So there's an example where we were able to refabricate or fabricate a missing piece. Here's an example from the West Legislative Chamber. The original carpet in the West Chamber would have been worn out. When it became worn and was removed, a sample of that carpet was saved in the permanent collection in one of those textiles boxes. We saved the samples, and then when we did the East Chamber restoration, we also worked to do restoration of the carpeting in the West Chamber. And here you can see a carpet runner in the vestibule that leads into the George W. Norris Legislative Chamber. And you can see we have matched it very, very well. I think in the East Chamber, there's a replicated carpet runner next to original carpet, and it's just virtually impossible to tell the difference. That's a way that the preservation architects were able to use the material we have in our collection, send samples back and forth to the fabricators, and able to come out with something that matches exactly. In the tour office, we use almost every day the synopsis of Dr. Alexander. Excuse me, that's within the archival collection, and it's where Alexander wrote down the themes and the subject matter for all the artworks, mosaics, and murals. That way, when someone comes into the building and they visit with us and they offer their view of what a particular mosaic might be or what a particular theme might be, we're able to go back to Alexander's original ideas and clarify any mistaken impressions that people have about the artwork in our building, or elaborate on what the themes are and what the themes are to describe about pioneer, Native American history, world history of. We have correspondence that relates to the artists. The artist correspondence, excuse me, the artist correspondence is especially helpful because it allows us to interpret the artwork. We don't have to look at a picture and try and guess what it means. We have the artist's description of what they were intending to portray within their murals, and that's very helpful also for us. We have news clippings of when the murals were placed in the building, and that gives us a good opportunity to gauge public comment. We get many questions from visitors about what did the public think about this when it was installed in 1964? Or was there any backlash about this particular portrayal of a story? And so we're able to go back through news clippings and things that we have in the collection to tell us about public response. And then again, that floor plan that we saw from the tour and in the design documents, those floor plans are very helpful to us because they help us identify the marble and just provides us another level of information that we can give to visitors who are very interested in the Capitol. Here's an example from the archival collection about how we use those documents. These are original renderings that were submitted with Bertram Goodhue's architectural design. And here you can see the two legislative chambers conceptually. The East Chamber is on the right and the West Chamber is on the left. You can see that the West Chamber has changed very dramatically. It's a way for us to explain to visitors the way the Capitol evolved with the political process of putting the initiative on the ballot and moving from a bicameral government to a unicameral government. We can interpret that piece of political history within Nebraska with the way that the construction of the building evolved also. We have scholars that come to do research on different aspects of the building. Hildreth Mier was recently the subject of an exhibit at St. Bonaventure University, as well as a publication, a catalog for that exhibit. There were many books about Bertram Goodhue that people have come to our archive to do research on Bertram Goodhue. The Harmony of the Arts, which was edited by Frederick Lubke, relied heavily on the archive for information, the different scholars that worked on that book. There are books about 50 state capitals that may get photographs from the archive that we provide for scholars or others to use. And Neil Monk came to our Capitol. Oh, we'll pause. Here's some pictures of the books, the publications that are about the building, Harmony of the Arts. You can see the catalog for the Elizabeth Dolan exhibit. And then here you can see the maquette of the Native American panel. In the artist's children's collection, there is her sketch of what she wanted the tapestry in the Warner Chamber to look at. And then here is the maquette that we sent to be part of the exhibit. Neil Monk came into our Capitol, a visitor. He was a visiting scholar at the University of Nebraska. He came in and looked at the rotunda and realized the paleontological significance of the mosaics in the floor of the rotunda. He was so enamored with that floor that he did research in our archive, finding the original maquettes and the design work. Erwin Barbour, professor of paleontology at the university, had done the preliminary sketches. Here you can see the sketch that he provided to Hildreth Mier, and then her interpretation in the tile mosaic of the floor, her maquette for the floor. And so Neil Monks then developed a program that tied Erwin Barbour from University of Nebraska State Museum with the work in the artist at the Capitol, and put together an exhibit that was used for celebration at Morrill Hall. The Carpenters use the capital collections. We have within the carpenter shop, we have the furniture shop, and the furniture restorers use the archive for restoration purposes. Again, they use the chairs in the permanent collection to guide them in the restoration of chairs that are part of the circulating collection. In this slide, you can see there are a series of chairs that have just undergone restoration and reupholstery. One of the things that the guys also do is look at shellac and varnish. We go back to the original finishes when they do restoration work on the furniture. Here you can see the desk that is down in the furniture shop that's being restored. Work is being done on the drawers. The top of it has been refinished, and it will be soon be available to put back into circulation for someone who would perhaps request a Capital Original desk. They can have one there in their office. Here you can see we have just begun an effort. It's a past perfect and archival inventory system where we are recording all the furniture in the building, so the work that would have been done on that desk would be entered into the past perfect. It can tell where the desk came from, what kind of treatment it had, what condition the finish was in. There's a photograph of the desk before it gets put back out into circulation. So that's an ongoing part of the archive too, and our inventory system is to track all the furniture in the building. The custodians use information about the different types of materials that were used in the Capitol to find the best way to clean these materials. They don't want to use chemicals that will harm or damage any of the surfaces. And here is an example of where they are trying to strip wax off of the rotunda floor. They determined that the best way to do it possibly was to scrape it off the floor. They knew that any of the chemicals that they might have to use would be detrimental to the marble itself, and so they're able to restore and repair different stones in the building without damaging it and using the information that they gained from the archive. When architects are working to take all the information provided and how an architect might use the Capitol Collection or the concept of the Capitol Collection and the archive in their own work, one thing that's very important to us is that the plans remained with us. If the architectural firm would have taken the plans back with them, there'd be a lot of documentation that would be lost to us. We have the samples of materials, the catalogs used, catalogs of furniture. All that kind of information is very valuable to the owner of the building if they're going to care for it long term. And that's what we're looking for with sustainability, is building buildings that will stand for hundreds of years and be reused. So it's very important for future occupants and future caregivers of buildings that are constructed today that they have this kind of architectural material, archival material. Any of the correspondence that was done between the client, any design discussion, why was something done the way it was done? That's all very important for an architectural archive in modern times, just as it is for the Capitol Archive. In renovation and restorations, if you have a historic building and you want to go in and do some renovation or do some restoration work, it's very important that you remove and retain the original materials. Set aside a permanent collection just as we have done in the Capitol. You can save samples of molding, you can save samples of the different kinds of materials that were used in the construction, so that later, if repairs need to be done, they have those samples. They can match the materials that were used as they do the restoration work. Saving items for possible return to service. I'll tell a very sad story. There's a beautiful, beautiful Queen Anne house that's down in my neighborhood. And the people that lived in it probably were the original people that built it, and then their daughters lived in it. And then when their daughters passed away, the house was sold. One of the things that the estate did was take everything out of the house, set it on the front lawn, and put it for sale in a yard sale. the balusters from the staircase. It was a beautiful Victorian home. All the decorative fretwork from the interior, built-in cupboards from the interior. All that was removed, set out in the lawn, and sold. Then the person who later bought the house wanted to do restoration work in the house. Excuse me, all that original material is gone. If they would have saved some of it, even small pieces, then as the people who had it did the restoration work, they'd know what they were restoring back to. So it's very, very important to save the original fabric. From the interiors, if you go down and you get to original wallpaper, save the samples of the original wallpaper. If there's a chandelier that was a gas fixture converted to electric, it's not really attractive, you want to put something new in, save those original light fixtures. You can put them away, and then people who own the house in 50 years and 100 years, if they want to put it back in, then it's available for them to go ahead and put back in. So it's very important to save those materials. Documentation, as you're doing restoration work, as you're doing renovation work, as we do when we're doing renovation and construction projects, we take photos of existing conditions, we take photos of room layouts, we keep samples of all the materials, and we document the changes for the maintenance shop. You document the changes that you make in the interior structure so that if you need to go back in, you're able to go back in and know what's underneath the fabric of the building. Storage, boxes, bags, acid-free, keep the items safe, climate control, try to keep the bugs out, keep all the things that you put away for storage for future generations. And then finally, at our website, www.capitol.org, we have additional material about the archive. There's a whole section on the Nebraska Capitol collections, and in the website you will be able to see a photograph, the postcard with those beautiful candlesticks that once graced the governor's suite. And if you take a look at those and they look familiar at all, please bring them on back. No question asked. Our Capitol administrator says every day is Amnesty Day at the Capitol, so anything you want to bring and return to the collection that will be used for future generations of Nebraskans, we would greatly, greatly appreciate that. Any questions? At all?
Roxanne,
Yes?
is any of this material stored off-site in case, God forbid, anything should happen to the building?
Karen Wagner, our Capitol archivist, will answer that question.
We're working on it. We have considered that. We're working on trying to get everything organized to the point where we can have it digitized or copied in some way so that we can store it off-site.
Thank you.
They do, the Historical Society does have copies of some material. So at least it's off-site.
Yes.
We had a photograph of the archive room and some paintings that were on display. I mean, do you rotate those throughout the building? Do they ever become part of a public display? Or?
The paintings that you saw on the wall are maquettes for the huge murals that are placed in the building. Whenever there was an artistic competition, the artist had to submit maquettes. We have all those maquettes as part of our collection, and so finding a way to store those maquettes, and in the archive we have them on the wall, indeed. And perhaps in the future, that's one of the things we can do for interpretation is take some of that material and have it as a display so that people can see some of the processes. That's what's important about the archive and the Nebraska Capitol Collection is we're using them for interpretation to show people processes of how the building was created and how it has evolved through the years. Other questions, perhaps? If there's no questions, I encourage you. Go to our website, check out the Nebraska Capitol Collection section. Also, check out the website. You can see mosaics and murals, the history of the building. It's a very fine site, I might say. And thank you very much.